triangle congruence patterns. Maybe you understand that you need to recognize them or that you use them for proofs, and how they're really important to some very interesting concepts. But what if you don't see the patterns? So this is to show those who don't see the patterns a step-by-step method that will always work to see the patterns, but also in the problems where they ask you, what do you need to make this angle, side angle, for example, what's missing, it'll work for that as well. So what we learned about was side, side, side has 3 sides, and so there are no angles marked, so it's pretty easy to recognize that one of all of them. The second one is side, angle, side. It's like a sandwich with the angle as the ham and the 2 sides are like the bread. So the angle has to be in between or being formed by those 2 congruent sides. Angle, side, angle is like a side sandwich. So the vegetarian ham is the side and the 2 angles are the pieces of bread. So this one, the side is actually touching both of the angles. So we call this angle the included angle. We call this side the included side. And then angle, side has 2 angles and then a third side third piece that's congruent, but it's not the one in between the 2 angles, because that would be the one here, angle, side, angle. So it's an angle, and then the side is not in between them. So there's a 2 or 3 step method that I came up with to show how to label and identify these patterns if you're not seeing them. Some of us, we just see them and we start to pick it up. So the first thing is we're going to label all the angles and all the sides with an A or an S. The second thing we're going to do is circle the ones we're using, the ones that are marked with congruence. And then we're going to connect the things we circled. And the one thing about connecting is you can go through only 1 or less of the things we are connecting, not 2. So this will all make sense in a moment. So the best way to do it is let's try an example. So let's say you don't see this pattern, and instead of drawing 2 triangles, I'll just draw 1. And so you label the angles A, and then we label the sides SS and S. So every triangle has 3 angles and 3 sides. If the triangles are congruent, all 6 pieces are congruent or equal. The second step is to circle the ones that are marked with congruent markings, or that if you had numbers where the 2 triangles shared the same number. We're using this one, and this one. See, the other ones weren't marked with congruence markings. So the third step is to connect them, and in this case there's nothing to go through but connect the ones that are next to each other. So you can see it actually will spell out side, angle, side. And when it doesn't have the same letter in the front and the back, we always want to read it in alphabetical order. This one won't matter because S is in the front and in the back. So we labeled AAA, SSS, we circled the ones that were marked, and we connected them. So some of them will have a space in between the things we're connecting, so let's take a look at that. Here's another triangle congruence pattern, and I'll mark the angles with an A, I'll mark the sides with this S, circling the ones that have congruence markings. Oops, that's the one we just did. Well, it's similar. We might as well finish it. Because when you connect this one, they're all next to each other as well. Angle, side, angle. So there will come times where connecting them will not be right next to each other. So let's look at a couple more examples. So the one that most people recognize is side, 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 but this also works with that pattern as well. And you'll see what I mean about going through 1 or less with this example. So here we have a side and a side and a side, but they're not next to each other. So as a rule, we can go through 1 other letter and connect them. And in this case, they all connect to make side, side, side. So there's one situation where you're going to go through one letter and it'll be a good rule to know that you don't go in a certain direction. You always go in the direction where you can connect one or more of the circled things. So we did angle, side, angle, side, angle, side, 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 side. Let's try another one. So we mark the A's for angle. We put an S next to the sides. And the ones we were given with congruence markings are the S, the A, and an A over here. So you might ask, well, how do I connect it? Do I connect with these two? And no, my rule says I could only go through one or less. So we always go through the side with one or less things that we go through. That we went through that letter S to connect the two circled A's. So as long as you go through one or none, it'll always connect and it'll show you the pattern, AAS. We always want to read it in alphabetical order, so we start at the A. Technically, the pattern's the same when we say side angle, angle. So this is one way that we can always have a rule. You know, some people like me, we need set rules, and once we program our brain, we can follow the rule and we don't even need to label anymore. So you're going to get to certain problems that'll say, okay, here is, well, let me use a different letter. Here is triangle XYZ. What else do we need to know to prove or to use angle, side, angle, triangle congruence? And so many of you might see it right off, but I will label angle, 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 side, side, side. Oops. So the ones we're using and working with are the side and the angle. So if I wanted to go and make angle, side, angle, I would need angle, side, I'd need it right here, which would be this one. Angle, side, angle. So this would be the piece that I would need, is this angle. So usually they give you two triangles and they'll say which pieces would you need to know. But in this case we would need to know angle Z has a congruence mark, and then it would make angle, side, angle. So let's try one with two triangles. So let's prove, or what the way they would say it is, what piece do we need to prove side angle side congruence? If you have these two triangles, RST, LMN, and we have a side here and a side here. So again, oftentimes you can see side angle side, the angle is the one in between them. It would be angle S is congruent to angle M. But if you don't see that, this will still work. What we've been doing, you can put an A next to the angles, put an S next to the sides, I'll put it outside, and then we circle them. You could do the same thing here. So we have a side and a side. So how would we get SAS? Well, we would need this A, which is angle S. And then here we have a side and a side. So to get the A, we would need this one, angle M. So we would need to know angle S is congruent to angle M, because that would be where the two spots are to make SAS congruence pattern. So hopefully this helps a few of you who are struggling and seeing the patterns at first, and eventually the goal is not to need any extra circling or writing, but to be able to just see it when you look at the picture.